Welcome back, baseball fans. The 1973-76 Carryover League off-season look. We're continuing looking at the 384 Carryon players who are presently in the league, and we want to analyze, can we make these guys better by improving them into a different year, which is an option in the draft, along with drafting new players. And so you have, tonight we are going to take a look at 8 teams. We've been looking alphabetically. We have gone through half the league. And we've made notations on the right side here. If we think a player could be improved, help his team out sooner than just waiting for that year to come. That's what you're weighing. You can move into that card, obviously, when that year arrives, but you're trying to accelerate the process. So tonight we're going to begin with Las Vegas. An expansion team. Expansion teams are always looking to improve because it's so hard to find players without a farm system by getting the extra player cards from other teams. So a lot of times internal improvement is the way to success. We have the 12 players here. And then we have, this is the year of the player, 6 73s, 4 74s, 2 75s, and we want to see, are they better in any of the other years? If you look over here, for the top half, the year of 73 is vacant, obviously. That's the year they're in. So you want to see, is 74, 5, or 6 better? Same here in 74. This area is vacant. If you go back a year or go ahead one of the 2 years, is he better? And of course, 75, 1 year into the future, which would only be 1 year improvement, or go back into the past possibly. And that might be an interesting option for one player. Las Vegas has a lot of options here, which is great for an expansion team trying to get better. Let's take a look at each one, beginning with Mike Anderson. Mike Anderson is a good defensive outfielder with the Phillies. Good arm, great range. Not that much of a stick, mostly just against left-handed pitching. So we have a 73 card where he's 772 OPS. And our suggestion is that in 1976, Mike hits 291 with a 371 OPS. His slugging's down a little bit, but he's more balanced. It can hit lefties and righties better in that particular season. So that could be an option for Vegas. Improve Mike Anderson. Instead of making him a platoon power guy, make him an everyday player with a higher batting average. The next guy, Aurelio Rodriguez. And first and foremost, I'm assuming this is going to be offensive improvement. We know he's a great defensive player. He's already a 1E13, so you don't want to lose that. There's a couple years here, actually. He's only hitting 222. But we're saying in 75, he hits 245 with a 385 slugging. He had 13 home runs. Big year for homers for him. 76, he didn't highlight it, but he's got a gold glove. He presently is a 1E13. I don't know if that's going to be, even though getting a gold glove doesn't mean you're going to be like a 1E8. Could be, though. I know he might actually be a 1E8, but his average is only 240 that year, and his OPS is 592. But again, every opportunity to improve an expansion team should be looked at carefully. Next player, Juan Beniquez. Nice little career for him. Was with Boston, then he moved, I think, to the Seattle and the Angels, Texas, Yankees. He bounced all over. Never got a full-time gig, though he did play some high at-bat. You know, he got close to some full-time gigs. 145, 23, 27 games with Texas. We're suggesting in 75, his last year in Boston, he's got a 760 OPS. That'll be the highest OPS he would have until a fantastic year in the early 80s. 1984. Well, 83 and 84. 83, he hits 305. 84, he hits 336. But that's way into the future. He's 34 years old then. We're suggesting it in 75, he brings that OPS up to 760. So that might be a good option. And the last player is going back into time. This doesn't happen very often. I'll explain what may have happened. The player is Greg Gross. So this is the situation here with Gross. Beginning of his career, was given an opportunity with Houston to play every day. Had a great batting average, but just didn't produce any extra base hits. No home runs over 3 years. Collectively, 47 doubles over 3 years. You see the point here. And then he would move on to be one of the best pinch hitters in the National League after that. But they took the 75 card, frankly, because they had availability. They didn't have availability for 74 a year ago. 75 and 74. The difference is 20 points in batting average and on base and OPS. That's what you gain if you just knock him back a year. For some reason, he steals 12 bases but gets caught 20 times. You seldom see that. Another thing to note is in 77, those numbers go way up. He hits 5 home runs, career high. 322 with the Cubs, 857 OPS. So that card will be available next year. So you're looking at the potential of improving him 2 years in a row, which costs you a draft pick to do it. So we go 75, 74, then 77. Or do you just sit with what you have and then wait for the year of 1977 to show up on the calendar? Then you just move right into that card. That's what we have to debate with Greg Gross. How much do you really gain by increasing his batting average 20 points? Because it costs you a draft pick, which means you could lose a player and have to find a free agent off the street, which they're not very good that late in the draft. Next team is Milwaukee. Frankly, it's like only one player gets a little better. It's Charlie Moore. And I think, is this another 291 batting average? Would that be the third one in a row? Mike Anderson, Juan Benitez, and Charlie Moore? I think it's 291 here. Yep. No, that's 1980. It's 291. 290. So he improves from a 245 hitter to a 290 hitter. From a 649 OPS to a 730 OPS. That'd be a nice improvement for Charlie Moore. Still, he's working in a platoon with Darryl Porter. Have to wonder how much playing time he'll get, with Porter seeing most all righties. Still, it is improvement for Milwaukee, the only guy who improves. Next up, the Twins. Not a lot of improvement here. We know Carew is in his best card as a second baseman in 73. And then next year, he can move into that 388 card of 1977. Also move over to first base. Jim Holtz near the end of his career, as is Tony Oliva, Bill Singer. Bill Campbell is the only guy who improves, and it's a rather peculiar improvement. He just wins a bunch of games. So it means his team probably comes in a lot of tie games and just gets a vulture win. It's hard to project how wins work. The incredible 1976 of Bill Campbell, 17-5. Though his ERA goes from 260 to 301, his WHIP gets a little better to 123. 77, he'll have 31 saves. So, I mean, it's so hard to project the wins on a Strat-O-Matic card to what we're doing. We've had 25-game and 24-game winners. 25-game winner Steve Stone wasn't even protected by the Orioles. They didn't even want him. 24-game winner Ron Bryant, his card was denied. They decided that he was better a previous year when he only won 13 games, but it was just a better card. So it's hard to project wins. But he does get a slightly better whip. So if you want to assume those wins are good luck, then move into Bill Campbell's card. The Mets are up next. Mets pretty much a classic lineup for a long time. They don't change too many pieces here. You still have Harrelson, Kuzman, Seaver, Grody, Wayne Garrett. Two new pieces they added for 74, Tony Saleta and Bob Apotica. Both have pretty reasonable and selectable improvements, particularly the Saleta card you have to check out. kind of flies under the radar a little bit in 75. So, really strangely in Kansas City, John Mayberry, first baseman, had his best year, hitting 34 home runs. While that was happening, Tony Saleta, another first baseman of the Kansas City Royals, still got 275 plate appearances. The two guys were both left-handed. They must have moved between DH and first base. Must have had like 700 plate appearances between the two players. But Saleta's got an 884 OPS with plenty of power both ways, 16 homers and 231 at-bats. And that card can really thump it, folks. That's one of the better power cards of his career. Saleta, unfortunately, just fell under the radar as he was with Kansas City and then the Angels. And then both those teams had other first base options pop up and prevent him from playing every day. So the Mets, they want to get some thud at first base, they can do that. One of their homegrown players is Bob Apotica. They added in his 74 card. It was his first card for availability. But then 75 and 76, things get even better. So he's got 103 innings with a 130 whip. Next 2 years doesn't get 100 innings, but my goodness, 111 whips, a 149 and 281 earned run average. Either of those years would be an improvement for Apotica. And if we assume Tug McGraw may or may not be on the way out, you always want to keep this Met bullpen sharp. They've lived and died off their bullpen. If any opportunity to improve it should be taken, I'm thinking the 75 and 76, or even both 75 improvements, might be what the Mets decide to do here. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to get both of these guys going. Next up, the Yankees. So, 76, they finally get to the World Series. So, here's the thing. As an honorarium, we suggest Thurman Munson in 1976 is the American League MVP, therefore that makes him an improvement. But does he? Let's take a further look. I don't like to do this, but we'll do it anyway. We have his 1973 card, and I'm of the opinion it's the best card of his career. Now, he's a Gold Glover. He's 12th in MVP voting. He's got an 849 OPS. Hits 20 home runs. And he's got a great throwing arm. Somewhere along the line of 74, 5, and 6, that throwing arm gets he gets injured, and I think it's a home plate collision, and he's never quite the same cutting down base stealers after that. So he's an 849 OPS as a Gold Glover. But in his MVP year, he drops 80, that's right, not 80 points in OPS to win the MVP. Does some base stealing, steals 14 bases, gets caught 11 times. I don't know. If I'm sitting with the 73 card, I max it out. I just wait. Maybe next year, if you don't like 74, 75, you just jump into 76. But I think you hold on to that 73. If for some reason 1976 is lean in rookies, and I don't think it will be because a second baseman, Willie Randolph, will arrive. And so he'll probably be one of their two players of 76. Which leaves the next guy, Roy White. And actually, this was a little guesswork on my behalf. His defense is so bad in 73. I think he's a 4+3. My assumption is he's got to be better defensively in a different year. 76, he's 26 in MVP voting. 774 OPS is a slight improvement. He also steals 31 bases. So if he turns into an ace stealer and is a 3 in the outfield and still has hits for power, draws walks, if you can get him to a 3 left fielder, and we're not going to know that until we take a peek at the Roy White card, but that's what I would do. I would love to vacate this 74 card because the defense is that bad. Next up, Oakland. Oh, here's a shocker. The Oakland A's, the world champs. Hey, look. Nobody gets better. Of course, that's why they just won the World Series. And they can do it again. And maybe again after that. Bando's in his best year. Dick Green, Reggie Jackson, Gene Tennis, Raleigh Fingers, all in their best years. Campaneris is in his best year. Lefty reliever Dave Hamilton, Claudel Washington, and Jim Todd, another good quality reliever. They're all in their best year. None of those cards are going to change. Not even next year. We'll have to get new cards for Bando, Green, Reggie, Tennis, and Fingers. What I mean to say is the year after next. It's completely conceivable for Oakland to repeat as world champions, particularly after how they won the World Series this past year, and noticing that you don't get any better than this. Next team, Ohio player expansion. This is a team that's always going to... They're a very weak team, and they're always going to look to improve internally before they start adding new players. Here's the first player, and this is a good one. Dan Driesen. This is a smart player to lock into contracts for a long time and keep hunting for his best year, because he'll finish this decade and go into the early 80s. The only reason he wound up here is that Cincinnati, of course, had Tony Perez at first base. Oddly enough, they moved on from Tony Perez to the Expos later in the decade, but guess what? You don't get to stash Driesen while playing Perez in our carryover league. And so Driesen ends up in the state of Ohio for the Ohio players. Playing out of Dayton, Ohio, if you're wondering. So Driesen 75 on the Big Red Machine is his best year in the timeline. Next guy, Larry Lintz. And this was just sort of popped up in one particular category that made me notice. If you remember the Expos in the early 80s, they had Ron LaFleur and Rodney Scott stealing 75 and 100 bases. Larry Lintz steals 50 of them in 1974 in half a season. So I'm assuming he's a double-A stealer. So even though the batting average drops 20 points, double-A stealer would be rather enticing to an expansion team, just to create some excitement here. Next player to improve is Elrod Hendricks. And you're probably going, you're crazy. You can't get Elrod Hendricks any better than he already is. And I'm like, you're sure I can. The only Elrod in baseball, Elrod Hendricks. Can we get him a little bit better than the 74 card? Let's take a peek. 74 Elrod is 208 with a 623 OPS. And I'm telling you, folks, in 75... he has twice as many plate appearances. He hits 215, gets the on base to 319, the OPS to 696, a career high 8 home runs. So it's a modest improvement. Again, if you have nothing else to do in 1975 with this team, if there aren't any, like I said, they don't have a farm system. They're relying on the scraps left over. If the scraps are awful, you may as well take one of your own guys, make them a little better. And by doing that, it means he vacates the year he presently is in, and you can find a free agent on the street looking all over baseball for that spot. The last player for Ohio, and this is a big deal, believe it or not. Well, I'll show you how this works. Vida Blue. Now, they traded for him a year ago. He was coming out of the 71 magical MVP Cy Young card for Vida Blue. He's never, ever going to pitch like that again. He has an injury in 72. He's still an all-star pitcher through the early 80s, but he'll never pitch like 71 again. So they signed him to a 4-year contract a year ago with a 75 card. But they have the option to tear that contract up and sign him to another 4-year deal for 76. And when you look at the difference, you'll say, this makes a lot of sense. Just because you sign him to a 4-year deal, you can sign him to another 4-year deal by bumping it all up a year. So 75 card, the numbers are a little misleading. Again, he's a 22-game winner. And what did I just say about Bill Campbell and his 20 wins? 76, Vita Blue, he's only an 18-game winner, but the ERA is 2.35. He's got the lowest ERA on his team. He's got a 110 whip. And he leads the league in FIP, if you're a big FIP person. I don't know how big you guys are on FIP, but he led the league in FIP in 71. He does the same in 76. Sold me. And the ERA was 182 in 71 with 8 shutouts. 76 is 235 with 6 shutouts. So this is the closest he's going to get to that as his career continues. So I would say don't hold on to 75 for 4 years, then jump into 76 for 1. Get the 76 card for all 4 years. So I'm almost locking this one in. You know? There you go. That'll remind me. Like, get into this 76 Vita Blue card. This team needs all the help it can get. All right, last team to do tonight is the Phillies. 76 was a great year for them. And Bob Boone and Tim McCarver, both catchers get better, and Gary Maddox hits .330. All in 76. Maddox's defense gets a lot better. Maddox seems a lock. If you're not crazy about improving platoon catchers, it's not a big deal, but I'm pretty sure Maddox will be, his card will get improved to 76. If you're wondering, let's go take a peek at Gary Maddox. He is presently stuck in a San Francisco Giants card where his defense is pretty mediocre in center field. 73. But you can skip over that Giant tenure and get into his second year in Philadelphia in 76. Gold Glove, 5th MVP voting, 833 OPS, 29 stolen bases. Yeah. Moreover, it says Philadelphia Phillies on his jersey, so that's another reason why we'll jump into Gary Maddox. Boone and McCarver, again, if they'd have nothing else going on in 76, I have to think there probably will be something else going on in 76. They went to the playoffs. There's probably going to be a Larry Christensen or a Dick Ruthven, or let's just go to that. Haven't looked at just gone to a team. Let's look at the 76 Phillies for a second and see, who do you want? Schmidt? I don't know. I mean, Schmidt's got a pretty damn good, what's his card? 74. His 74 is very strong. There's Maddox. Johnstone's hitting .329 in 75. Lefty? I could see that. Lonborg, well, he's not their property. Ron Reed, not their property. Jim Cott, you'd have to trade for him. He goes from Minnesota to the White Sox to the Phillies, so it's real tricky to get him here. Lazinski gets better, but he's already great. Dave Cash sort of stays the same. And there's Boone and McCarver. So if I'm saying Boone and McCarver are the improvements, they're way down here on the war list. So is there a rookie somewhere that I'm missing? Jerry Martin? Not that much. He's not that great. Carlton, Cott, Lonborg, Christensen, and Underwood. They are very average. I mean, if they're available and there's a spot, great. But otherwise, there's nothing really special about them. They're at 142 and 139 whips. I mean, we're talking about the Philly pitching staff. It was never really that great. They already have Garber. Do they want to, you know, the Mets presently have the rights to Tug McGraw. That would be an expensive acquisition to get him off the Mets, a division rival. Then most likely don't have to wait till his Mets tenure ends and becomes a free agent for that to happen versus a trade. So we'll conclude tonight with those 8 teams. We'll be back again next week, wrap up the last 8 teams in this series of 384 carry-on players. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.